How Sitting Bull confronted the U.S. Army. As tensions between U.S. forces and Sitting Bull's people escalated, the Lakota leader sought spiritual guidance. In early June 1876, Sitting Bull performed a sun dance ceremony. During the ritual, he danced non-stop for 36 hours. He made 50 sacrificial cuts on each arm, and as blood ran down, he entered a trance where he had a clear vision of victory. When he awoke, Sitting Bull shared his vision: American soldiers falling upon a native camp like locusts from the sky. In his vision, the soldiers were upside down, some even losing their hats. He took this as a sign. Soon, the Lakota people and their allies would triumph over U.S. forces. And indeed, just weeks later, they did. Native warriors claimed victory at the Battle of the Rosebud, defeating General George Crook, and won an even greater triumph in the subsequent Battle of the Little Bighorn. During this battle, 3,000 warriors faced General George Custer and his troops, resulting in a decisive victory for the native forces. They wiped out every soldier on the field, including Custer himself. While Sitting Bull's warriors fought the battle, the chief protected the tribe's women and children, ensuring their safety. However, this victory was short-lived. Custer's defeat, romantically called Custer's Last Stand, shocked and enraged the U.S. government. In response, more American soldiers were sent west, driven by vengeance. The death and legacy of Sitting Bull. Sitting Bull's final years were filled with hardship. As U.S. forces advanced, he led his people to Canada in 1877, seeking refuge. There, he lived in exile for nearly 4 years. However, over time, he realized his people were suffering from food shortages. Wanting to ease their suffering, Sitting Bull surrendered to the U.S. Army in 1881. In return, he secured amnesty for his tribe, but he was forced to spend 2 years imprisoned at Fort Randall in South Dakota. After serving his sentence, he was transferred to the Standing Rock Reservation. Though he had always resisted the idea of living on a reservation, he was occasionally allowed to travel outside his new home. By this point, he had become somewhat of a celebrity, often seen more as a curiosity than a threat to the U.S. government. However, Sitting Bull found ways to resist assimilation. He frequently wore traditional clothing and continued speaking his native language, which he sometimes used to insult white Americans without them realizing it. In 1883, Sitting Bull was invited to speak at the opening ceremony of the Northern Pacific Railroad. He was expected to give a warm speech welcoming the mostly white audience. Instead, he surprised everyone by saying in his native language, "I hate all white men. You are thieves and liars. You have stolen our land and turned us into outcasts." Since his translator read the approved speech rather than his actual words, the audience mistakenly believed he was praising them and erupted in applause. Beyond ceremonies and events, Sitting Bull also made appearances in Buffalo Bill Cody's Wild West show in 1885. By then, he had formed an unlikely friendship with Buffalo Bill, despite the showman being a former U.S. Army scout. He also befriended famed sharpshooter Annie Oakley, whom he affectionately called Little Sure Shot. Although Sitting Bull saw the job as an easy way to earn money, especially since people were willing to pay extra for his autograph, he sometimes faced mistreatment from crowds. At 54, he finally returned home for good. "A teepee is a better place for a red man," he said. Yet, peace always seemed to elude Sitting Bull. Tragically, his death was no different. On December 15, 1890, before dawn, Native police attempted to arrest Sitting Bull due to his alleged support of the Ghost Dance movement. He resisted. Though it was only 6 a.m., a crowd quickly gathered at the chaotic scene. Suddenly, someone fired a shot at one of the officers. In response, the police opened fire on Sitting Bull, killing him instantly. The news of his death at the hands of the police devastated many. Annie Oakley bitterly remarked that if Sitting Bull had been a white man, someone would have been hanged for his murder. More than a century later, the chief's legacy endures. In 2021, his great-grandson, Ernie LaPointe, was identified through DNA. But even before the confirmation, LaPointe had dedicated his life to telling his ancestors' story. Thanks to him and other indigenous writers, Sitting Bull remains one of the most revered Native American leaders of all time. In 1876, on the eve of a confrontation with American troops, Sitting Bull danced for 36 hours straight on the banks of the Little Bighorn River. The Lakota chief made 50 sacrificial cuts on each arm in a sacred ritual. During this trance, he had a vision of American soldiers falling from the sky like locusts, a premonition he interpreted as the imminent defeat of U.S. forces. Join us as we explore the saga of this Lakota leader, whose bravery and indomitable spirit make him an unforgettable figure in American history. Welcome to the story behind the photo. How Sitting Bull became a fearless warrior. Born in 1831, in lands now known as South Dakota or Montana, Sitting Bull, then called Jumping Badger, did not seem destined for the life of a warrior. His father, Jumping Bull, even nicknamed him Slow because of his calm demeanor. But as he grew, the young Teton Dakota revealed his true nature. At just 10 years old, he displayed bravery by taking down an American bison for the first time. By age 14, he had proven his courage again by knocking a Crow warrior off his horse. Impressed by his son's strength and fearlessness, his father decided to rename him Tatanka Iotake, or Sitting Bull. The American bison, seen by many Native Americans as a fearless, strong, and stubborn creature, seemed to embody the spirit Sitting Bull carried within him. Before long, Sitting Bull joined the Strong Heart Warrior Society and became a member of the Silent Eaters, a group dedicated to the well-being of the tribe. By 1857, he was named a war chief and gained recognition as a holy man. However, Sitting Bull and his people soon faced a new and formidable challenge. White settlers began moving west, coming into conflict with native tribes. Sitting Bull's life was about to change dramatically. The broken promises of the Fort Laramie Treaty. In 1863, Sitting Bull faced U.S. troops for the first time. At the time, the U.S. Army was at war with another native group that had rebelled after federal agents withheld essential supplies from their reservation. Witnessing such betrayal, Sitting Bull made a solemn vow never to sign a treaty that would confine his people to a reservation. He knew that his firm stance and continued resistance against the U.S. government could bring future hardships. Yet, he remained unwavering in his convictions. "The white men may get me in the end, but I will have my fun until then," he boldly declared. With a watchful eye, Sitting Bull observed the Great Plains leaders negotiating treaties with the U.S. government. Although many agreed to the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty, which established the Great Sioux Reservation and promised additional lands in areas like Nebraska and Wyoming, Sitting Bull outright refused to sign. "I want everyone to know that I do not intend to sell any part of my land," he stated. "Nor will I allow the whites to cut our timber along the rivers." Sitting Bull's steadfast and unyielding stance earned him the admiration of many, elevating him to the unprecedented position of supreme leader of the Lakota Sioux. As a leader, he gently guided the various autonomous Lakota Sioux bands that lived across the Great Plains. His wisdom soon proved prophetic. In 1874, gold was discovered in the Black Hills, a sacred site within the Great Sioux Reservation. Without hesitation, the U.S. government broke its promises under the Fort Laramie Treaty, insisting that Native Americans abandon their land. But Sitting Bull refused to back down. Instead, he prepared for battle, ready to defend his people and their homeland.